Hello and welcome back to another episode of MC Airsoft. My name is Mark, and today we're going to be talking about how to mount a scope onto a airsoft sniper rifle. This is the second video in the series of setting up, in this case, an SSG-10, but whatever your rifle of choice is. But yeah, we'll get into it because this is going to be a fairly long video, and I ramble anyway. So first thing you're going to need, I suggest 2 levels. You can get by with 1. Blue Loctite. Different brands are going to probably have different colors, but look for removable Loctite. What that's going to do is it's going to make it so your screws don't rattle themselves out, but you aren't going to need to take a blowtorch to it to get it off anyway. So, and then obviously the scope. In this case, we have a Matrix 3 to 9 by 40. It's got 2 turrets, doesn't have the third one. No parallax adjustment, does have a focuser knob. And honestly, it is reasonably clear. It's I think I picked this up for under $40, so can't expect too much from it. But I wanted something lightweight, small, not cumbersome. 9 magnification is plenty for me, so yeah. Now, first thing we'll do, put that down for right now. First thing we're gonna do is level the rifle. Now, I'm just using these 3 bubble levels. They work. If you're going for something a little more precision like a real rifle, then you'll probably want to go for a dial indicator. It's basically a level that's about yay big around. You stick it on there and it gives you an actual angle number. But for airsoft, and it's gonna get us in the ballpark. I've already measured off. I know that my scope can fit across the tube on my scope can fit all the way across, but we don't want to do that because we are going to need to slide it back. But we'll throw on the scope rings to start off. We'll put the rear one all the way back, and out of force of habit, we're going to push it back while screwing it in place. It's something you do on real guns, doesn't really matter in airsoft, but force of habit, we'll do it anyway. And then I'll go for the rear notch on my front rail segment as well. For those of you who don't know, I've already leveled this, so I'm not going to be taking it off. But for those of you who don't know, you can look at pictures online. The SSG-10 does not have rail over the bolt piece. Not really my preference, but I'm also not going to complain too much, right? I would prefer to have an entire rail. Just gives you better mounting options with different scope tube sizes and things like that. But yeah, it came with the rifle. I didn't have to buy it aftermarket, so I'm not going to complain too much. For these, they have the little hole in them. They also have they're also hex shaped, but the little hole, you can just take the Allen key and make sure they are nice and snugged up, right? Be careful with these because airsoft scopes are cheap. Scope rings came with it, so I have to assume they're even cheaper. Although it seems like decent build quality. I'll have a review later. Just you don't want to strip these out. So the next thing is, and tilting back my hat for this, so you want to turn the scope all the way up to 9, in my case, whatever your maximum power setting is, because that is going to give you the shortest eye box, right? Are you going to probably ever use 9? Probably not, right? But It does give you the shortest eye box, so that's what we're going with. We're going to turn it all the way up to 9. We're going to place it roughly. Haven't put my tops on for the scope rings yet, not a big deal. But what we're going to do, normally I would get down in prone position. At the height this is at, it's going to be fine. The reason that we're going to do that is because, as you can see with my other rifle here, okay, the more inline my body gets, so say I'm laying down behind the rifle, okay, the more inline my body gets, my cheek is going to come forward more. So let's say my cheek is here. As I drop the rifle down, it's going to move away from it, right? So here's where my cheek was in, pseudo prone position, versus when I'm standing, it's going to be back further. So what we're looking to do is set it up so it can shoot in all positions. You can also go with whatever you're most likely to be doing, which Airsoft, let's face it, you're probably going to take most of your shots standing, maybe kneeling. So you could just set it for standing in a comfortable position, but I like versatility. I don't want to have to do this again. So what we're going to look to do is get behind the rifle, and again, this vise is at a good standpoint, right? So I have to really get behind it. It's kind of like prone, but I can do it on camera without having to move the camera. We're going to get behind it, and we're going to adjust the scope far enough back that we are just at the edge of our eye box, right? So any further in, I start getting more scope shadow, which is good because that's the back of where I can be. I'm gonna nudge it a little bit further forward just to make sure I have plenty of room for the for everything to bite on, for the scope rings to mount properly, and double check. So that is good there. And I'm going to take my tops of my scope rings. We're going to just set them in place so I know where they're going. Okay. Now take your time with mounting a scope. I'm not using a torque wrench. You obviously can. This is a $30-something scope, so it's not exactly going to come with torque specs. Can't expect it to. If you are mounting a more expensive scope, you're going to want to double check the torque specs, get a torque wrench, torque screwdriver, whatever. Make sure you set the torque appropriately, and you're going to mount it that way. But like I said, this is a $35 Airsoft scope, so it didn't come with one. So going to make sure that while we're tightening them down, we're not getting uneven pressure. You can tell because on the scope rings, there is going to be a gap between the upper and the lower scope rings, one on either side. You want those to be about even. So, and right now I'm just going by feel, just to make sure they're about even, okay? So the scope is now held in place firmly. I can get behind it, go ahead and check that again. I can lower my body to bring back the rifle. I can raise my body, can do whatever I need to check. Okay, that seems about good. So make sure that's snugged up. We'll run our level again underneath. Okay, that looks honestly hard to tell. So I'll pop off my scope rings. If you have higher scope rings or lower level, you won't need to take them back off, but I'm just going to do this so I can double check my my rifle is centered as I drop things. Or my rifle is level. Now would be a good time also. I'm going to be putting some Loctite on the screws to attach it to its base, but we're going to make sure this is level first. And of course I knocked it out of level as I drop a bunch of things. I'm doing this in real time with no editing, so if you want some super fancy editing, this isn't the channel. Just hoping that y'all learned something, right? So we're back to level, cool. We're gonna take that blue Loctite. I'm also trying to go quick so this isn't too long in the video. Okay, take that blue Loctite, put just a very small little dab on each of the screws, okay, in there. Going to put it back where it was, and again we're going to make sure it is pushed up against the rear. Okay, tighten that up, which, like I said, you don't have to do, but it also helps if you ever take off your scope and you want to put it in the exact same spot again. If you always push them to the rear, well, it's going to be in the same spot again. So, or at least should be, right? Okay, so we're going to snug those back up, and then we're going to loosen our top rings. Now I know where this is, so I don't have to worry about it too much. Okay, we're going to take our level, put it in on top of our top scope ring, okay, and then we're going to make sure we know the rifle is level, we know the, or at least the scope base, the rail is level, so we're going to make sure as well that the scope is level. Obviously the turret might be slightly cantered, right, but we are doing what we can with airsoft equipment, right? So we're going to just snug up these screws again. See how quick that was? As long as you have a level, this shouldn't take or a couple levels in my case, this shouldn't take very long, right? So that's leveled. Now I can get behind it. I can look down on the SSG-10, A1 at least. There's a seam line running down the center of the rifle. That is machined from the mold, right? So we know that is the center of the rifle. So what we're going to look for is we have the center line of the scope, right? And we're going to try and line it up with that center line on the rifle. We can get behind here. Looks pretty good. From my eyeballs, it looks a little canted to the right. So we'll go ahead and loosen up the screws a little bit. And we're going to just kind of tap it into place. Not huge, big movements, right? So minor adjustments, and minor adjustments. Just take your time with it. The reason this is important, by the way, lining up the crosshairs, is you want to make sure the rifle is leveled. So what you're going to be looking for, if you have a off-kiltered crosshair, is you're instinctually going to turn it, right? You're going to turn the rifle to get those crosshairs lined up and leveled, and that's going to cause the BB to shoot one direction or the other because of the hop up, right? So we're set there. That is good enough for government work, as they say, right? We're going to just give these a snugging so we can make sure that they're going to stay in place, because the next step is we're going to take these screws out one at a time. Go ahead and throw some Loctite on them. Okay. Cam. All right. So just a little bit. You don't need too much, and if you put too much on them, there are holes at the bottom of the screw holes that it's just gonna run out the bottom and onto your rifle. Now this scope also, I'm sure, looks a little far back, but you got to remember this is an airsoft gun, so I'm not going to be hitting my face with recoil. Not a big concern, honestly, unless you're shooting a large receiver reel gun. You're probably not going to have to worry about that anyway. So go ahead and put some Loctite on that one. As long as you understand recoil management and all that, it's not really a concern with the big real guns anyway. Also, I want to say this scope came with scope rings that have one screw on either side. If you can get the ones with two on either side, that's also gonna it's obviously more secure, but it's also gonna help when you're setting them up, because you're taking one screw out, and that won't mess with your it won't take off the top ring, because as I take off one screw, right, the scope ring is now loose. So that is something to be aware of. It's fine. It's just not as easy. I'm blowing off the excess Loctite on there. Not that it'll really hurt anything. Before I paint this, I'm going to be hosing it down with simple green anyway as a degreaser. Obviously, I'm going to make sure not to get it into certain parts that need the grease. Yeah, I'm going to be hosing it down anyway, so it doesn't matter too much, but save myself the trouble later, right? Because once Loctite gets hard, you might even, if there's like a good sized little droplet on there, you're probably going to need to take a putty knife at least, or some kind of scraper to it, and it's just not as good. Okay, so now I'm going to go in a, I would say star pattern, but there's only 4, right? So like a Z kind of shape. So from one screw across, up, across, back and forth. And we're not going to give these each a good crank down every time I'm going into them. And because this is an airsoft scope, I'm only going to be using the long side to tighten. So I'm going to be holding it like that the entire time with the long side tightening, because if you use the short side in the screw to tighten, then you can apply a lot more torque, and that's not going to be good for these. That's one of the reasons that we're using the Loctite, is because that way we don't have to torque down, and it's still going to stay in place nice and solid. And as you're going, just go ahead and give the scope a double check. Make sure it hasn't twisted any, hasn't turned, because if you tighten them unevenly, you can actually turn the scope one way or another. Go ahead and make sure that is nice and snugged up. Okay. And then we'll go ahead and take this out, double check our work. Okay. Make sure that we can see through it nice and clear standing on all our power settings. Okay, so that was 9, it's good. That's 3, good. So now that is it for installing the scope, right? If you've seen the first video in the series, you know that I'm putting tools in the back, so I'll go ahead and take that Allen key, throw it right back there. Okay. So that way, yes, I Loctited them, but maybe if I'm out and about playing, maybe these screws come loose anyway, and that way I can tighten it back up. So, yeah. That being said, until next time, my name is Mark, and stay safe and stay hydrated.